Hello and welcome to Greatest Games Never Played, a Lantern Light Studios production. I'm Alex Fitzsimmons, and I'm joined, as always, by my co-host, Reno Del Maro.
What's going on?
What's up, Reno?
Doing good, chilling. How are you?
Doing okay. There's a fly in my room, and if you hear it going off in the mic, don't be surprised. He is
Yo,
persistent.
I'll tell you something. I have a 2-year-old daughter. She's going to be 3 in November. Fucking hates flies. Like spots them from like a mile away, like a goddamn Call of Duty sniper. She's like, Daddy, fly. I'm like, yeah. She's like, get the fly. Like she won't fucking stop until I get it. She's like, you will get up from dinner. I don't care if you got a hot piece of turkey and mashed potatoes in your mouth right now. Go kill that motherfucker. Go kill it. You
Well,
know?
she's got the instinct, so once she learns to walk and move around more, you have a kind of a trained fly hunter on your hands. So you have
Well,
that. You have that going for you.
she's been walking for like since she was 9 months old. So she's pretty fast. She could probably kill it if she could reach it. You know what I mean?
I
She's a
don't know.
savage.
I don't know how this works with kids. I don't know how when they start
No,
walking, talking. I don't know. Is it 18?
you
That's
are
that's when you start talking,
clearly
right?
off.
It's
Yeah.
18. All right. So
Yeah,
what we
she's a savage, dude. She ate a fucking spider once.
so what we
That's a
do
true story.
on this show is we take a look at pivotal moments in sports history and break them down, reanalyze what could have happened if those moments had gone differently. Last week we covered three uh, stories of sports heroes whose careers ended early due to tragedy or injury. I think we had a good time with that one. So we're gonna do something a little similar today and throw it back with a new three for one kind of deal here. We're gonna be looking at three busts and reimagining their careers if they had gone a little differently as well. So without further ado, let's get the topic. Let's get the details from the one and only Taro Sujimoto.
Franchises and fan bases hang in the balance every year when the entry draft comes around. The fortunes of struggling franchises can be turned around with the addition of a top draft choice. But what happens when the high pick doesn't live up to the expectations? Teams can spend years recovering from the damage done by a pick who goes bust. Ryan Leaf, Alexander Daig, and Sam Bowie, all top 2 picks in their respective sports, had dreams of success and championships dashed due to injury or attitude. All 3 failed to live up to the promise that flashed during their amateur careers. But what if they could do it over again? What if Leaf could stay out of trouble off the field? If Daig could have remained motivated and Bowie could have avoided injury? We will find out today what could have been if these top draft choices met their expectations and avoided the curse of the bust.
All right, we're back. Reno, you ready for this, man? We've got three giant busts on our hands here.
Yes, yes, indeed. And you know what? I love like whenever you see on television or hear like a series of shows. So like I'm excited about this series. I like it. A little tales from the vault, as they say, you know what I mean? And the bust outs, we hear about these guys all the time in some way, shape, or form. So I think it's time to for us to weigh in on it.
Yeah, no, because anytime you got a bust, there's a fan base that is invested in this guy. He's a high pick. The future's bright, and then when it ends up like these guys did, it's a hard thing to come back from as fans. So let's just jump right into it. We're looking at who do you want to take on here first?
I'll start with Ryan Leaf. All
Oof.
right. Yeah, probably considered the number one or number two, depending if you consider Jamarcus Russell the bigger bust because he was actually the first pick in the draft and Leaf was the second pick. A lot of people tend to go with Russell because he seemingly had potential and just fucking got fat and let it waste away. But Ryan Leaf was a bust on epic of epic proportions. I mean, oh man, let's get it going. First of all, Ryan Leaf, 6'5", 245 pounds. The guy has the size intangibles for a quarterback. huge arm, right? Played for the Washington State Cougars out of the Pac-10. So he was a high school quarterback who, funny enough, he was considering going to the University of Miami. He was going to be a Cane, and he wanted to play linebacker.
Really?
But he ended up, yeah, he wanted to play linebacker. And you know what? When you look at the guy's mental state, he probably would have been a way better linebacker because he would have at least been able to take his fucking temper out on a couple guys on the field. But he chose to play quarterback at Washington State because the head coach at the time, Mike Price, coached Drew Brees, or not Drew Brees, I'm sorry, Drew Bledsoe, who, was a longtime Patriot and stuff like that. And he told Leaf, he's like, yo, you come here, you come to Washington State, we're going to go to the Rose Bowl. And so yeah, Ryan Leaf ended up buying into it. At Washington State, though, impressive numbers. I mean, this guy, there was a reason why he was the number 2 pick and potentially number 1 pick. I mean, he started 24 out of 32 games in the 3 years there. His junior year, he averaged 330.6 yards passing,
Mm.
which that was a Pac-10 record at the time. 33 touchdowns, and he led the Cougars to a Pac-10 championship. And he went to the Rose Bowl in '98. They lost to the national champion Wolverines that year, but he's also a finalist in the Heisman Trophy balloting that year. He was third behind Peyton Manning, and the winner of the Heisman Trophy that year was defensive back Charles Woodson from the Wolverines.
Hmm.
So this guy had some accolades. He had some big numbers, man. I mean, his QB rating in college all 3 years. So in his first year, in his freshman year in '95, 121.8, sophomore year 127.5, and then his junior year in '97, 158.7. This guy completed 227 passes for almost 4,000 yards, 33 touchdowns, 10.1 yards an attempt. So he was definitely highly, highly touted going into the pros. But the other thing was that he was going up against the guy who finished second in the Heisman Trophy ballot there, Peyton Manning out of Tennessee. So the whole deal with this was going into pros, the combine, going into the NFL draft. It was basically Manning and Leaf were the 2 best players, period, in '98. And even though, Woodson was a high pick too, these guys, the cream of the crop are always quarterbacks. They're considered the most important player in the team always. And you see why, because you start a franchise around them. So yeah, there was a lot of scouts and analysts debating these 2 guys. Tony Dungy at the time was the Buccaneers, coach. Uh, you know, and he didn't need a quarterback, but he was split between them. He said you could talk to some people. Leaf, like, a lot of people favored Leaf because he had this strong arm and he had this unbelievable potential. While other people thought Manning, was the more mature player at the time, which was very true and ended up panning out to be very true throughout his career. But he was the more mature player and he was a safer pick, and he was someone that you could probably plug in right away and he would have been a safer pick. But equally, these guys were both loved, and no one really shit on the other. Colts owned the first pick that year. Bill Polian preferred Manning, especially because during workouts, he saw that Manning actually threw harder than Leaf. Not further, but harder. He just
Hmm.
threw a harder ball, and he liked that. He also impressed him in the interviews, which, by the way, Ryan Leaf missed a lot of interviews during the scouting combine and during the whole draft process. So his prospect profile kind of described him as like self-confident to the point where he was arrogant and obnoxious. He also gained 20 pounds between the end of his junior year and going into the combine, which people saw as a negative. You know what I mean? Like, what's this guy doing? Like, no self-discipline.
Hmm.
So a lot of people did view Manning as the better choice, but they weren't necessarily down on Ryan Leaf. They thought he had the good intangibles to develop into a good NFL, a really good NFL quarterback, a franchise quarterback. So San Diego actually had the 3rd pick that year, and Bill Polian was talking to the general manager Bobby Beathard of the Chargers, and Bobby Beathard wanted to trade for a number 1 pick, and he actually preferred Manning because he was friends with Archie Manning and he knew Archie Manning, right? But Polian didn't want to give up the first pick, so he was like, all right, I'm going to take Leaf. I got to get to the second pick to make sure I secure him. So what's he do? He trades up to number 2 with Arizona, gives up their third overall pick, a future first rounder, a
Mm.
second round pick that year, and 3-time Pro Bowl wide receiver, running back, return specialist Eric Metcalf.
Now, I would
To
ask you. I would ask you right there. Do you know who Arizona's quarterback was at that time?
in '98, I think it was Jake Plummer, wasn't it?
And they
I
wanted
could be wrong.
because wouldn't it have made sense for San Diego just to wait? Like if they had a quarterback at all, like could they have probably just got him at 3?
They might have been
What are
able
they
to get him
doing?
at 3, but maybe there was the idea that Arizona could have possibly taken him if they weren't in love. I think Plummer was there in '98, but I could be wrong on that.
He is. I just looked it up.
Um, yeah, I swear he was, and I was like, because then he went to Denver afterwards. But I think they liked Jake the Snake. They might not have been in love with him, but I guess they were like, you know what, we like him enough that we'll secure these picks and get a skill set, get a skill player like Eric Metcalf with that was a veteran at that time in return. Manny goes first, but Leaf ends up signing a 4-year contract worth 31.25 mil, including an 11.25 mil signing bonus, which was the
Not a big
largest
deal.
ever paid. Not a big deal at all, yeah, but the largest paid to a rookie at the time. So it's funny too because Leaf was quoted after he signed his contract as saying, "I'm looking forward to a 15-year career, a couple of trips to the Super Bowl, and a parade through downtown San Diego."
Nice.
Of course, the night after the draft, he flew out to Vegas on the Chargers owner Alex Spano's private jet, partied all night, and was yawning in his introductory interview the next day.
I like his style there. I like that. I like what he's doing here. He's off to a good start.
Oh yeah, definitely. But so '98 season comes along, and you know what? Like actually, his rookie season, Manning threw a lot of interceptions too, but he threw more touchdowns. This guy had disgusting numbers. I mean, he threw 15 interceptions and only 2 touchdowns, and that was in 9 games started. Now he didn't start right away, but that was 9 games started. I think they had Jim Harbaugh there actually in '98. They signed him as a veteran, and they so he didn't have to start right away, but he ended up coming in and yeah, just awful, awful rookie year. But like here's the thing, he was fined for skipping the final day of the rookie symposium. Already he was having like troubles with the league, troubles with his team, but they won their season opener and over the Buffalo Bills. And he made a couple of mistakes fumbling the ball and stuff like that, but he won his first 2 games, and then it kind of just took a shit through there. I mean from there. And actually, I'm sorry, he did start. I apologize. Someone else came in later in the season. I think he was banged up a little bit. So I digress on that. But yeah, he didn't have a great rookie season. If you look at some of his numbers, I mean, they're abysmal. He threw 111 passes. He had a 45.3 completion percentage for 1,289 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 15 interceptions.
Oof. 2
Yeah,
touchdowns.
really bad, like terrible, right? So, but he didn't have like crazy weapons there. Like they weren't like stacked yet. And they certainly didn't get guys till later. Um, but essentially going into the '99 season. So, okay, it's his rookie year. He didn't have quite the year Peyton Manning had, but they both threw a lot of interceptions. They didn't have a great year. Okay, you're not ready to write the guy off yet, but he was like freaking out on people his rookie year. He was like going crazy and shit. Like, first of all, he related poorly to the media and his teammates. He seemed to blame, his poor play on other players, and and he alienated a lot of guys. Like, Junior Seau and Rodney Harrison went up to Bobby Beathard and they're like, "Yeah, this guy's killing us." So he's like developing a really bad reputation, poor work ethic. I mean, the guy was literally like faking injuries and going and playing golf and skipping practice to go and play golf. I mean, wow. Wow. Like you just got paid $32 million and that $11.25 million signing bonus, and you're fucking going off and doing that. Then he called a reporter from the San Diego Tribune a fucking bitch and told him to knock it off when the guy, was basically questioning him about his performances and stuff like that. He's caught on camera. He's flipping out. This guy so far not good. Like he's a mental case. He's blaming everything on other players. Um, he's blaming his poor performances. He's missing rookie symposiums. He's missing interviews. He's skipping practice to go play golf. He's lying about injuries. I mean, he's a total piece of shit so far. You know what I mean? So
So
you're
it's,
thinking, okay,
so that was the
oh
issue
no,
with
we're
that.
just
So that's the issue with him is that it's not that he didn't have a talent; it's that his head wasn't on straight.
oh no, that's the thing. He had the tools, he had the arm, but he had nothing between the ears. That's the thing. He had nothing between the ears. He goes into 99 season, right? So they're going into training camp. 20 minutes into training camp, dude tears his labrum. You know what I
Mm.
mean? And he's getting heckled by fans. He's wanting to fight fans. He's placed on injured reserve, and then he gets caught. He gets caught like weeks later. He was playing flag football in a park and playing golf, and he's supposed to have a torn shoulder, torn
Uh,
labrum, and he's injured. This guy's a real, I mean, piece of work, piece of shit. Really, it's like the key. So basically, dude, he sucks. So he's out the whole 99 season, right?
mhm.
He's out the entire 99 season. He comes back in 2000 and he plays 9 games. Mordrek, 161 completions, 50% completion percentage, less than 2,000 yards, 11 touchdowns. So he throws a few more touchdowns, but 18 interceptions. He's upped his interceptions by 3 now, right? His QB rating's a 56.2. It's a little bit better than his 39 a year before,
Mhm.
right? They've basically had enough of him. The At that point, he's getting benched for Moses Moreno. What the fuck? Moses Moreno? Who the hell is Moses Moreno? You know what I mean?
So
Coach
that
Mike Riley benches him for Moses Moreno.
that speaks highly of the of just how bad it was. Like if a team's ready to give up on a guy after essentially 2 seasons, like that's for a first round pick, let alone a number 2 overall and a quarterback. Those guys get often get chances way past the point of reason. So for them to be done with them 2 seasons in, is
Yeah.
an indication of just what was going on behind the scenes.
Literally 2 seasons in. I mean, they're done with him. He gets cut. Tampa Bay picks him up after he gets released in 2001. Tampa Bay picks him up. They're intrigued. They're like, oh, maybe we could develop him more slowly and stuff like that. Apparently, his wrist had not healed from an injury that he had at the end of the season prior. So they wanted to demote him, to the fourth quarterback and take a lesser salary. This asshole refuses. I mean, instead of saying, you know what, maybe I'll stay in the league for money and I'll learn and I'll try to have a redemption story. He basically puts 2 fingers up and says, fuck you. Like, I'm not taking less money and I'm not being demoted. He's released, right? Dallas picks him up. Of course they would, because Jarrah loves scumbags, right? And and he fails his first physical before the start of the season. You know what I mean? And they, Quincy Carter was their starter again. So what did they do? They cut him, but brought him back after Quincy Carter got hurt, and they signed him. And he played in 4 games, all losses. You know what I mean? He was 0-3. He threw 88 balls for less than 500 yards, 1 touchdown to 3 interceptions, 57 QB rating. He's
Mm.
balls, and he's out of the league. Seattle gave him a stint, but he's gone. Then you see later on he starts having legal troubles. And, he's indicted on a burglary charge and controlled substance abuse. Now he's a drug addict in the state of Texas in 2009. Basically, between 2009 2014, he's indicted on different accounts of drug charges and parole violations and burglary. So he's in and out of jail for a few years. It looks like he cleans himself up at some point in the mid-teens of the 2000s, somewhere around 2016, 2017. He even compared himself to Johnny Manziel or his career. But Manziel was doing drugs while he was playing. This guy started doing drugs well after he was out of the league,
Yeah.
or at
So
least that he got caught for.
yeah, it looks like he admits to 2002 being when he starts taking Vicodin and triggers like an 8-year run with an opioid addiction.
Yep. Then he gets into it. So yeah, he was probably taking him at the end of his playing days. He gets busted in 2010. Funny enough, after his career's over, he's getting now into doing some ambassador work for the NFL for like recovery communities and sobriety communities. You think, oh my God, okay, this guy's got something going. He gets a radio show and he's a college football analyst for the Pac-12. ESPN hires him in 2019 to be a ESPNU analyst for the college football season. And this year, of course, in May, he gets busted on domestic violence charges.
Mm.
So I got to be honest with you. We were talking off air before we got on, and I said, "Listen, you know that old cliche. You know, you polish a turd. You know, Alex, I love what we do on the show. That's when you asked me to be a part of this. When you asked me to be your co-host, I love the ideas that we are able to generate, the creativity, the imagination, like what we could really go into the deep recesses of our mind and come up with. Look, man, this guy sucks. All right. He is a fucking piece of shit of epic proportions. And I will listen, Ryan Leaf. I know you're not listening, but if you ever hear this podcast, I don't care how fucking big you are. You're a piece of shit. I'll fucking fight you in the streets. Fuck you.
I mean, I
Two
don't recommend
fingers up
this.
to you. I don't care. You know what? You want to get crazy? Let's fucking do it, Holmes. This guy sucks. I didn't know what to do with him. I mean, I'm being generous here. So this is where I turned. I kind of took this instead of like, hey, what if this guy wasn't injured? Or hey, what if this guy didn't have this tragedy? No, this guy had fucking mental issues. So what if he got mental help, right? Best case scenario, he stays healthy. He never tears his labrum in 99. He's in training camp and he continues his assholery through training camp. You know what I mean? And in the preseason, he's a piece of shit. After his final preseason game, right? You know that dress rehearsal game, game 3. It's always a dress rehearsal for the starters. They usually
Mhm.
go 2 or 3 quarters. He's unimpressive. He's 9-21 for 110, no TDs and interception. He's pulling his shit on the bench. He's coming out of the game after 2.5 quarters. He's fucking cursing. He's blaming this and that, right? They're 0-3, the Chargers are in the preseason. That year, they actually went 0-4 in the preseason. And they signed Jim Harbaugh that year. But in this scenario, they're not signing Jim Harbaugh. He's healthy, and they're not going to sign Jim Harbaugh when he gets injured. They're 0-4 in the preseason, and they went 8-8 in the regular season that year. But after preseason game 3, right, Rodney Harrison and Junior Seau and left tackle John Jackson, who's another veteran on the team, they're pulling this motherfucker into the showers, right? They're roughing him up a bit. They're fucking choking him. They're fucking smacking him around. They're giving him the fucking old hucklebuck. You know what I mean?
I wasn't expecting this. I wasn't expecting this.
They're giving him the hazing story, and they're gonna or they're just gonna put a real scare into this motherfucker, right? To cut the shit and to go to therapy. So he seeks mental health support, right? The team backs this move. Leaf starts seeking out life coaching, mentorship from coaches and former players. He's getting the therapy he needs to get the mental help he needs and get over his mental fucking inacuities, his problem, right?
I don't want to interrupt
So
you here, but I do want to celebrate the fact that I just killed that fly.
yes, my daughter will love you. I'll tell her after the show.
Back to
She's
it.
sleeping. I'll tell her tomorrow. So this actually proves to sustain him mildly. He's going to go on to have a 10-year career through mental health, through continuous mental health, right? But, eventually lackluster performance and injuries are going to cost him in the end, right? And within a decade. So I'm going to say this. Leaf's going to get the mental help that he needs. He's going to get his head on straight because the guy's got the physical tools. He's going to start taking coaching. He's going to stop pulling the bullshit with the faking the injuries and going and playing golf and going to strip clubs and whatever. It's going to find success in 99, 2000, 2001, 2002. He's going to get some playoff appearances in each of those seasons, right? Team's going to end up exercising their 5th-year option on him in 02, and then they're going to franchise tag him in 03 for $9.5 million before trying to reach a 3-year extension with him in 04. So in the end, this guy's going to have 10 seasons, right? He's going to find a way to lead the Charge to 4 playoff appearances and 7 seasons at the helm. But he's going to go out in 3 out of the 4 playoff games with a wild card exit. He's going out in the first round of the playoffs, 3 out of the 4 games.
Yeah.
And then he's going to he's going to win 1 game and he's going to lose in the divisional round, right? He's never going to reach the AFC Championship or beyond in his career. This guy's never winning a title.
So basically,
All right?
you're saying the stealing with this guy, if he gets the mental health help that he needs, is that he's a below average kind of quarterback. He's not good enough. Like no,
No, he's not good enough.
like his head, yeah, his head held him back. But even without the head issues, he was never going to be good enough.
No, he's average to below average. He kind of reminds me of a little less successful Chad Pennington. You know what I
Hmm.
mean? Because Pennington at least got to an AFC title game. You know, Pennington won some divisions. This guy is going to be like an average to below average, but people are going to give him a chance because he does have the tools, right? So I got him basically going. So he ends up, released after two poor seasons in '03 and '04 and some nagging injuries, right? Keeps him out for multiple games in those seasons. Also, at this point, Drew Brees was drafted. He's on the team and he's playing in his third and fourth year. He's playing in replacement of Ryan Leaf. So Drew Brees was actually drafted in '01, the same year as Tom Brady. I call it the year of Tom Brady, right? The year of the Lord Tom Brady. Uh, Drew
Jesus.
Brees has some good success in '03 and '04, coming off the bench. He's in his third or fourth season and Leafs injury history and decline in play in '03. Teams just set to make that move. And actually, they're ready to make that move on Eli or Philip Rivers in the '04 draft, right? So we know what happens. Rivers ends up getting traded to San Diego for Eli. Funny thing is, they believe Ryan Leaf and his dad had something to do with that because essentially um, Archie Manning talked to Leaf's dad and asked him about how San Diego was treating him, like how they treated him, how they took care of him, and basically Ryan Leaf's dad shit on San Diego and was like they did nothing for him. They were poor. So Archie and Eli really get themselves pushed out of that first pick and get out of San Diego to New York. New York drafts Rivers and then they flop picks. So Rivers is there. Brees takes over the mantle for Leaf fully in '05. Leaf ends up released by San Diego after the '04 season when he finished on IR. Brees goes 9-4 with a playoff berth. In '05, Leaf ends up I got him signing a 1-year deal with the Cowboys to be the number 2 behind Drew Bledsoe and one ahead of Tony Romo, right? So he's behind Bledsoe, but he's one ahead of Tony Romo, who's in his rookie season, right? Well, the following year, Romo just fully takes over. So Leaf's out. So is Drew Bledsoe, right? So Leaf ends up with Nick Saban in Miami in 2006, right? Competing with Joey Harrington in spot starts. And then in '07, Cam Cameron ends up taking over when Nick Saban runs back to Alabama. And Cam Cameron ends up taking over. And essentially, Ryan Leaf ends up losing his job to Cleo Lemon. Leaf calls it a quit after the latest rash injuries and losing his job to Cleo Lemon of all people. So now you got Moses Moreno, in real life that took his job, and then Cleo Lemon. So this is what I have his career: 54 wins with 40 losses, 4 playoff appearances. He loses in all 4 of them because I guess they got through in my scenario. They got a bye in one of them. He's a one-time Pro Bowl selection, 2001. He throws for a little under 18,000 yards, 126 TDs to 64 interceptions with a career 59.8 completion percentage. That's all I could do for this guy. He
Hey,
sucks.
yeah,
I'm being generous.
it sounds like you did him some favors there.
I definitely did him favors. I mean, I was like, for what our show brings, I'm like, I gotta give this guy something because I really wanted to take a giant heaping shit on him, like the
Man.
rest of the world has, like he has done to himself.
All right, all right. I like it. I like it. We got a It's unexpected. I'll say that. I wasn't expecting the locker room beatdowns or a few
That's
other
the
things.
only way. It's the only way.
I
This
wasn't
guy's big
expecting
as
that.
asking.
So, all right, all right.
Look,
I don't
my
want
dad
to.
always said it, Alex. Good punching him out sometimes helps a friend. I don't know. I mean, I never done it to any of my friends, but my dad used to say it. It sounded good when he said it.
Well, I mean, I'm gonna keep my distance from you for a while now until you forget about this right here. I don't need to catch a punch in the mouth for no reason.
No, I like you. I don't want to lose you as a friend, man. We got a good thing going here. All right.
All right. So let's keep it moving here. I know we have the next one up is one that again, as the hockey guy here, I'm always excited to take on. So we're looking at
In your
Alexander
wheelhouse.
Degg, the 1993 first overall pick. To understand Alexander Degg, though, I think you almost have to understand the Ottawa Senators. This is a team that was founded in 1883, wins 11 Stanley Cups before being relocated to St. Louis in 1934 and then folded. So this the capital city of Canada is without a hockey team for 60 years, for almost 60 years before they get an expansion team that starts the 92-93 season. They have their expansion draft, which is not as friendly as it is today. There was a lot more protection of the teams that had their players back then, so you had to kind of pick from their dregs really. And then they get the second overall pick because they came in here the same year as the Tampa Bay Lightning. So 92 Sens and Tampa Bay Lightning come in. Sens get the second overall pick, and they take Alex Yashin. And Alex Yashin stays in Moscow for the first year, and the Sens are trash. They win like 10 games. I think they win 10 games out of an 84 game season.
Wow.
So the next year they get the first overall pick. And in fact, it's interesting too because as the season's winding down, there starts becoming accusations that the Sens are losing intentionally to try and get this first overall pick. Because this kid, is Alexander Daigle, is setting the Quebec Major Juniors on fire, playing for the Victoriaville Tigers. He's lighting them up for 137 points in 53 games in his last year.
A little suck for Daigle, huh?
Suck for Daigle is what they were doing. And and it's actually funny because the league actually investigated this. They did a full investigation into it to determine if the Senators were indeed tanking. They came up inconclusive, but they decided based on that it was time to implement the draft lottery. So 2 years later, the draft lottery would be set up in 1995 to avoid rewarding teams for tanking. I mean, you could still tank and essentially get the first overall pick, but you had to also win a lottery. So the Sens get their shot. They got their guy. They got the first overall pick, and they go for Alexander Daigle, the smooth skating, point scoring center / winger. And when he's drafted, he said, "I'm glad I got drafted first because no one remembers number 2." And you know who number 2 was?
Was that Chris Pronger?
Hall of Famer Chris Pronger. You know number 4? You know who number 4 was? Hall of Famer Paul Correa. It didn't really just didn't end up well for the Sens because they passed on 2 Hall of Fame players right there, and really that whole draft was pretty stacked. There's a lot of other guys in there that were really good too.
That guy deserves a backhand
Well,
for that comment alone.
Yeah, I would agree. I don't think he was really thinking too far ahead on that one there, but
Well, he shit on Pronger and Correa.
yeah, he didn't need to do that. But the thing about Daigle is he's flashy. He's got the face. This guy's got Hollywood movie star looks. He looks like this motherfucker looks like Paul Rudd. So so instantly the Sens are like, this is the face of our franchise. He's a French Canadian kid, which they love, in Montreal. But Ottawa's willing to. That's the capital of Canada. They're willing to embrace this kid, put him on all the brochures, sell his jersey everywhere. And then so the next year steps in, and Alexei Yashin from the previous year comes in, and he's gonna have his rookie year in the same year as Alexander Daigle is, because Daigle's gonna come in as an 18-year-old. And the race is on. People are going, "Oh, which one of these guys is going to win Rookie of the Year?" The Senators are going out publicly saying, "This is Alexander Daigle. Alexander Daigle's going to win this thing." He didn't. He didn't. He scored 51 points, which is nice, but it would end up being his career high. Alex Yashin puts up 79, but there's another.
And they touted Daigle over him.
The problem is they continue to do it after this. But more interesting on that though, Yashin puts up 79. But a little guy you may have heard of also happened to be a rookie that year, Martin Brodeur, who locked up Rookie of the Year that year. So the Sens are bad. They're bad with Daigle and Yashin, even though they're scoring a couple points. They're leading their team in scoring, but the team's garbage. So I think they improved to 14 wins and an 84 game schedule again. And this is where the signs of Daigle being in trouble here start showing up. So he's 51 points the first year, 37 the next year, and a shortened season. The following year, a full season, he puts up 17 points his third year. Meanwhile, Alexei Yashin, he's a star. He's a big star. And it becomes a problem then because when Alexei Yashin was signed as the first pick of the Ottawa Senators history, they offered him $4 million over 5 years. Pretty sweet deal. He took that a year later. They get Alexander Daigle, and they go, "How's 12.25 over 5 sound?" So Alexei Yashin is now the star on the team, and he's looking over this guy.
He wants to get
He's looking over
paid.
the guy next to him who just scored 17 points in his third year. He is not pumped about this. But ownership is still backing Dag. Dag is the face. Dag's he needs to be the guy. The head coach Rick Bowness he puts Dag onto the fourth line because he's tired of it too. He can't. What does he do with this guy? The management comes in and fires Rick Bowness. They fired the coach over putting him on the fourth line.
And they fired their assistant coach, who
Lane
was
Vigneault.
That's right, Flyers own Lane Vigneault. So there's my
had to
Philly
bring him
back.
back. So
I digress. Yeah.
So, but by
continue,
97, 98, management, they've had it with him. They don't know what to do with this guy anymore. He seems more interested in pursuing a Hollywood career. He's driving fast cars. He's dating Pamela Anderson. He's just doing everything but playing hockey at this point. So they ship him off for a decent return to Philadelphia. So it didn't take long. You got their Philadelphia pool.
God.
So Philly gave him Pat Falloon, who was a second overall pick behind Eric Lindros in 91, I believe.
Another bust.
Yeah, he had a career. But yeah, number 2 overall, you expect more from. And they threw in Vinny Prospel, who ended up being a pretty nice player. So he would spend about 2 years there before getting moved to Edmonton, who would then trade him to Tampa Bay on the same day they traded for him. He gets picked up by the Rangers the next year, and by the age of 25, this guy's out of hockey. And he would admit at this point that he didn't have the desire to play hockey. It wasn't something he loved doing. He was young. He stuck with it because he was good at it. He revealed that he had struggled with depression, dating all the way back to midgets and junior hockey. He said that he would set these lofty goals for himself. He'd like, I'm going to score 50 goals this year in midgets or juniors. And he said he would go destroy that goal, and just the joy wasn't there. It wasn't fun anymore. And this guy lost his love of hockey at that young age. Like, he's 15, 16 years old, and he doesn't love the game anymore. He's just so good, he has to keep playing it. So at 20,
that's unbelievable.
It really is. So Dag,
God, I wish I could step into his body.
You know, there's so many people that the passions there just don't have that kind of just natural ability he had. So Dag would go on. He would create an event promotion company, kind of to pursue his Hollywood dreams. And he would do that for 2 years before he would get the itch. He'd want to make a comeback. So he starts trying to make a comeback. He latches on with the Penguins in 2002, spends most of the year in the AHL before he finally, the next year, he goes to Minnesota, finds a role on a defensive-minded team, ends up matching his career high of 51 points in 2003, 2004. But by 2006, he's done in Minnesota too. And he would end up going to Europe for 4 more years to wind down his career. On the plus side, though, for a guy who wanted to get into the filmmaking industry, he did today. He is working in the film industry, running a film studio in Montreal called MTL Grand Studios. So, you know, for it all going poorly in the sense of his hockey career, well, that's debatable. It ended up good.
He's not living a bad life.
Yeah, it ended up good for him. He's doing now what he wanted to do all along. He had the Hollywood itch that he wanted to get in the film industry, and that's where he ended up today. He may not be in Hollywood, but he's doing it in Montreal, and that's a good story, I think. And again, I think when we talk about the reality of Dag's career, is that he actually had a decent career. He played from 93 to 2006, and he finished with 327 points in 616 games. The problem was the expectations were so high. This guy was brought in to be the face and to save a franchise in Canada's capital city. Like, it was just too much. If the guy wasn't Lemieux, the guy wasn't Gretzky, he wasn't gonna succeed. So I guess in this scenario,
yeah, I agree.
I guess in this scenario, I'm gonna look at this and I'm gonna say, what if Dag never lost that love? Well, what if instead he was driven? What if he really loved it? He wanted to be the best. It was something that he needed to do it. Like a lot of people do. Like a lot of guys who make it this far have that. They just don't have the skills. And what if he viewed it that way and said, like, you know what, my film career, my acting career, my production career, that can wait till I'm done. Let me do this as hard and as fully invested as I can. So I'm gonna look at it that way. I'm gonna say that's what he does here. I'm not gonna give Dag fucking super skates and say, you know, he's even faster, but I'm just gonna give him the drive. I think he had the skill. So in this case, we're here. He burst on the scene his first year with Alexei Yashin. Nothing's different. I think he popped on the scene. He was hot. 51 points as a rookie is nothing to sneer at. He's an 18-year-old kid putting up 15 points on a team where him and Yashin are looked at to drive all the play. So there's nothing wrong with that. They would finish dead last again. And then what happens here is the next year, they end up picking third overall because after the year after they came in, the following year the Panthers and the Ducks were expansion teams, so they got the first two picks. So the Sens go third, and they pick Radek Bonk, who ends up being a decent player. I think at this point you're gonna start looking at it's a shortened season. We all know that Dag scored 37 points. I think in this case he's probably coming on putting up 42 points. Nothing crazy big. A small improvement's not enough to make a big difference in the team though. They still stink. The third leading scorer on that team behind Yashin and Dag that year was Sylvain Turgeon. You know how many points he had?
30.
The third leading scorer on
Wow.
the NHL franchise. 19.
Oh,
He had 19 points.
19 points.
He was the third leading scorer on the team. Like, what's going on here? So what happens then is that they stink. But the next year comes around and they got the draft lottery's in effect now because of Dag. In fact, they've also capped rookies because of Dag. Like this guy changed a lot of the ways rookies in the draft is done now because of what happened with him. So, but the Sens win the draft lottery anyway, and they go and they take Brian Berard, this beast they call him. He's a really nice offensive defenseman who's big, strong, just has it all. He has all the tools. So what happened with Berard is he went to training camp with them, and they ended up sending him back to juniors. They said, "Oh, you need another year to season," but he didn't like what he saw. He said he didn't trust the management. He didn't trust the players. He didn't trust the organization at all. He demanded a trade. He said, "Get me out of here. I don't. There's something poisonous here." And so they ended up trading him to the Islanders for I believe Wade Redden and a bunch of other pieces. Wade Redden was the third overall pick in that same draft as Berard. But in this case right here, I'm going to say that Berard sees Dag. He sees this Yashin and Dag driving, just doing hard work. And he's like, I'm going to trust this organization. They got two guys on the ice who are doing the right thing. I'm going to stick around. So he doesn't demand his trade. Interesting thing about Berard, I don't know if you know about him, he ends up winning the Calder Trophy for the Islanders when he first played the next year. And in 2000, he would end up retiring because he was legally blind in one eye after taking a stick to the eye. He would take a year off, get surgeries. He would make a comeback while legally blind in one eye. He would have to wear a weird contact that gave him like some tiny bit of vision, and he came back and played. Also, on top of all this, in 2006, he became the first NHL player to ever test positive for steroids.
Oh man,
the guy named Beast. He's out there playing with one eye, all roided up.
I get it.
But
that's I kind of think it's glorious in a way.
Yeah. So what I have is after this year, in real life here, Alexei Yashin holds out. He's upset about the pay difference between him and Dag in the 95-96 season. I think this time Dag's a good teammate. He publicly speaks out. He says forcing management's hand. They have to sign Yashin. They can't turn their back on their dreamy star boy right here. They have to give him what he wants. He wants a Yashin there. So they go ahead and they sign Yashin to an extension, paying him some bonus money to get him some money right up front to keep him happy. And I think in this case right here, that's a place where Dag makes a big difference here. Also this year, 95-96, it's the first arrival of Daniel Alfredsson, an unheralded 6th-round pick who ends up winning the Calder this year and ends up the longtime captain in real life for the Senators. But I think Dag drives his production from 17 points up considerably. I think he continues to improve. I think he's at 58 points. And this continues on for a little bit here. A new coach the next year. Berard steps in. He wins the Calder. And look at the draft. And they end up making the playoffs that following year. And just like in real life, I have them falling in the exact same place here. Because the only thing that's different here is Dag and Berard. And the team's still not that great. They end up making the playoffs, losing to Buffalo, just as they did in real life here, which ends up slotting them in the exact same spot in the draft where Marian Hossa falls to them at 12 overall, just like real life. And then next year you have Chris Phillips from the previous year, a draft pick they had in the first overall draft pick there, who was a defensive-minded guy who was probably paired really well with Berard. I think it start seeing the pieces come together here because it's not just one man. Dag can't save this team by himself. I think the team's going to go out there and get Jacques Martin, their head coach. Dag's going to improve to 71 points this year. Sens are going to get the 8th seed, knock off the Jersey Devils, number 1 seed. This doesn't happen. Well, that's what happened in real life, but it doesn't happen in this situation right here. Magic does not strike twice. They end up playing the Flyers in the first round because they bump up from 8th up to, I got them going up to third place in the division, in the conference rather, and they end up facing the Flyers. They fall to Lindros, Leclerc, Brindamore, and Vinny Prospel too, who they end up not getting. He ends up biting him back in the ass. Due to the difference in standings, they end up taking Robin Regehr instead of Matthew Chouinard. So that's a plus too. I got 98-99. Yashin's named team captain as Connie Orth's let go, and he puts up this MVP caliber season. He was second in Hart Trophy for league MVP behind Yager that year, and I think that's where Deg has his big year, blowing up alongside Yashin, playing wing for Yashin. I think that's where you would end up putting Deg with his speed and size. I think it would have benefited him to play wing, and I got him putting up an 85-point season to go along with Yashin there. And this dynamic core, they got this Berard, Phillips. Now you've got Hossa playing on the team. You've got Yashin and Alfredson and Deg who's producing. In real life, both Jersey and Ottawa went down in the first round. In real life, these are the top two seeds in the conference. They both went down in the first round. I got them switching places. I got New Jersey and Ottawa switching from 1 to 2 and 2 to 1. But ultimately, the same thing happens. They both get upset by the same teams in the first round as well. And I think the most damaging thing on this right here is the slight improvement in the record is going to cost them drafting Martin Havlat and sticking with Michael Civic at 27 overall, who's a nobody. So, and then we move to this is where I think things start really becoming different right here is 99, 2000. Yashin holds out the entire year. But I think it's because of this bitter relationship they've had with the ownership there. I think this time it doesn't happen because he's got this contract extension. He's got Deg putting up points next to him. He knows Deg is going to step up and fight for him as the face of the franchise, even though Yashin's really the star here. I have Yashin holding on to the captaincy because they stripped him of it when he held out this year too. I mean, you add a productive Deg and another year of MVP caliber Yashin since he held out the year after he was second overall in MVP voting. I think you see a team that's going to win their division and hold down the second seed in the conference, setting up a big matchup with Pittsburgh. This time, Pittsburgh's defeated, and the Sens, led by Patrick Lalime in net, defeat their own goalie, Ron Tugnut. Ultimately, I think what you have here is the Sens facing their division rival Toronto, defeating them, and then losing to Jersey as Brodeur and the Devils roll and defeat the Dallas Stars in the Stanley Cup as well. But then the following year, this is where I think it gets interesting here, is that this is when Yashin left. He came back, played one more year with the Senators, and then he left he demanded to be traded. And this is where Mike Milbury, the New York Islanders general manager, makes one of the most infamous, terrible blunders of a trade when he traded Zdeno Chara, Brian McCult, and a second overall pick, which ended up being Jason Spezza, for Alex Yashin, and then locking up Yashin to a 10-year, $87 million deal in 2001. I don't think this happens this time. I don't think the Sens deal Yashin. I think, but it's a shame because I think it's ultimately better for the Sens to take advantage of Mike Milbury's fucking blunder here. But I don't think they do. I think they're happy with Yashin. I think Yashin's probably tolerant of them. He plans on playing on his next year and cashing in a free agency anyway. So with no Spezza or Chara coming here, the Sens pick 27th. They take their third line center, David Steckel. Ultimately, the trade there was going to end up be the linchpin for the growth of the Senators, who would build around Spezza and Chara. I think what you have here is this very good core of players in Yashin, Dig, Alfredson, Hossa, Phillips, Berard, Lalime. They move on. They have a good year the next year, but they end up falling in the playoffs again. And I think Yashin bails. I think he goes there and chases free agency money. And you know what? Mike Milbury and the Islanders is still probably want to throw stupid money at him. So he probably goes. The Senators can't compete with that. And I think what you have here is a case of Deg then looking around the free agency as well. And I think he's probably sees the most interesting team for him is probably LA. He can go out there and start making those connections he needs to make.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I got Deg joining the LA Kings for 3 years, puts up mediocre numbers, retires at the age of 30, stays in LA to invest in his Hollywood dream and working in the film industry. And ultimately, Deg ends up with a nicer career. He's not a Hall of Famer. He puts up a really respectable career. I got him retiring very young because I think he wants to, because he retired in the middle of his career to go back and try and get into Hollywood, break in that way. In this case right here, I think he had a little more love for the game. He stuck around in the middle of it. And he saved he wants to get out of hockey early though. He got his money. He wants to now invest in his time in the Hollywood dream he has. So I got a committed Deg at 30 years old retiring with 734 points over a 12-year career. It's pretty really respectable. He doesn't change a single Stanley Cup that's won. He doesn't change a single award that's given out. But I think his career is viewed differently, where people go, oh, "Yeah, that's a guy who was pretty good and retired early." And I think that's there's nothing wrong with that. And I
Yeah,
think
he's not Gretzky.
it puts a nicer, more realistic view on what Dag could have been if he would have actually cared.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's actually not a bad way to put it because yeah, he wasn't going to be Gretzky or Lemieux. I mean, he wasn't even going to be Lindros. But you know what?
And that was a big part of the problem was Lindros had gone 2 years before, and here's this franchise-defining first overall pick. And I think the Senators fell in love with the idea of that being a guy you can go get, even though it wasn't the right year for it. I think they just like this is going to be that guy. This is that franchise-defining, change the course of your whole decades. And it just wasn't the guy. He was just a first overall pick who was a nice player.
So Al, he was touted as this can't miss prospect because he was on fire in the juniors. But like, who was he compared to? Like, who did he model his game after? Like, was it Anthony, our producer, and I were talking off air before about how like in certain sports, like there's always a guy they compare him to. You know, in basketball, it's all or should I say like hockey, it's always Gretzky or Lemieux. Like the next one, like David. You got the kid now. Why am I forgetting his name from Edmonton? Oh my god. Uh, what's it
Connor
called?
McDavid.
Connor McDavid. Yeah, I'm losing my mind. You got Connor McDavid, but people are like, oh man, he's the next Crosby. But before Crosby, is like Crosby's the next, Wayne Gretzky and stuff like that. Like there's always a guy they compare guys to. And usually you always hear about it in kind of basketball and hockey, but baseball and football always seem to just compare greatness, not to guys. Like who was
Yeah.
like was he
Uh,
compared? Like were they saying like I know like Lindros was called the next one, as in the great one, the next one. He was the one behind Wayne Gretzky. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I think a lot of people there's a lot of hype around him because the point totals were so high, and he seemed to be the ultimate package with the looks and the guy who could be a face of your team. He was fast. Yeah, I think there was more. They fell in love with the idea of him. What he really probably compared out to was probably a more Pierre Turgeon kind of guy.
Okay.
I think maybe even a Pat LaFontaine a little bit, but it definitely wasn't. I think people that know weren't saying this is Lemieux, this is Gretzky. In fact, I believe Bob McKenzie even said that directly after he was drafted. I think he even said, "Hey, this is no Lemieux, this is no Gretzky. It's a nice player, though."
He's just a
And
nice
that was
player.
that was the first time you really heard somebody say that publicly too, because we'd all just kind of assumed this guy is the next Gretzky, the next Lemieux.
They should have figured this guy didn't have the passion for the game or he wasn't serious after he
They should have.
apparently
They should have.
whispered on the
They should have.
plane that there
Yeah.
was a guy that had a bomb on the plane and caused havoc
Well,
in an
that
airport.
yeah, that seems like a more immaturity thing, where he was making a joke about a bomb on a plane.
You don't
I
say
don't
bomb on a plane. You
you
don't say
you
bomb
don't say bomb on a plane.
ever.
But
Pre 9/11. You know what I mean? You don't say bomb on a plane.
but yeah, I don't know if that's a real indicative. That's more indicative of his maturity level at the time, as opposed to his love for the game, which I think just was gone. I think it was sucked out of him at a really young age, and
Yeah.
yeah, and it's a shame because he could have been something more like this. I think.
Yeah,
So I'm
absolutely.
gonna kick
So
it back to I'm gonna wrap my story up. I want to kick it back to you because we got one more to go.
all right, we got the curious case of Sam Bowie. All right, so the 7'1" center out of Kentucky. Obviously, he was a Wildcat, played at a big time collegiate program in college. So he's actually from Lebanon, PA, which is not too far from us, Alex. A little less than two
Yeah,
hours away. But this guy was a highly, highly touted and recruited national player in high school in 1979. I mean, he was receiving all kinds of honors and praise. He was going to be the next big thing. He got recruited by Kentucky. He was averaging 28 points and 18 rebounds a game in high school. He was a McDonald's All American. Yeah, he was leading his team to state finals. So he had a lot of hype, right? Even in Sports Illustrated, they had an article focused on him and a couple other high school centers in 79. So you knew this guy was going to be the next big thing. He signs on to play for the University of Kentucky and coach John Hall in 79, right? So his freshman year in 79-80 was pretty good freshman year. I mean, right off the bat, he's averaging 12.9 points per game and 8.1 rebounds and 2.1 blocks per game, right? Kentucky goes 29-6. They advance to the tournament. He's averaging 13 points, 11 rebounds, and 3 blocks in a game. In a game over Florida State, a big win over Florida State, where he played some minutes there in his rookie season. They did end up losing to Duke 55-54 in the next round. So between his freshman and sophomore year, he actually gets picked for the United States men's Olympic basketball team. That was going to be coached by Dave Gavitt, and the assistant coach was Larry Brown.
Mm.
However, in 1980, we talked about in a previous episode for the Miracle on Ice that Jimmy Carter and the United States actually boycotted that Summer Olympics because it was in Moscow, and
That's
Moscow,
true.
or Soviet Union, should we say? It was invaded Afghanistan. So he's on this team, and what did they do? I mean, he had Isaiah Thomas on this team. He had Rolando Blackman, Mark Aguiar. There's some players on there at the time, Buck Williams, Al Wood. So they're not able to play in the Olympics. But what they do is they start playing a series of games against NBA All-Star teams in various cities across the country, and they go 5-1 in those games, right? And it was called the Gold Medal Series. That's how they labeled it, right? In those 6 games, though, that they played, he was the second leading scorer, and he was the leading rebounder and shot blocker on the team. He had 11.6 points per game, 6.9 rebounds, and 2.3 blocks. I mean, he was 19 years old playing for Team USA against NBA pros. So now they're like, whoa, now this guy's really starting to turn heads, because now NBA teams are seeing him play these all-star teams full with pros. So he goes into his sophomore season. All of a sudden, boom, he's jumped up. 17 and a half points, 9.1 rebounds, and 2.9 blocks per game, right? He's
This is a 7'1" athletic dude. I get where the recruiting's coming from here.
absolutely. He's got good size. He's not too big. He's like 235, 240, but he's agile. He's got good footwork. You know what I mean? He's kind of got like a little bit of a Euro style to him even back then, right? So so it's looking great. He's a third team All-American in college, right? By the Associated Press. Um he got the most block shots in a game. He had 9 block shots against St. John's, like broke a record, right? Or shared a record for the most blocks in the game, right? All of a sudden, though, injuries start plaguing him his sophomore season, right?
Big men, man, big
Yeah,
men.
yep, big
It's
men have
always
big problems,
these
man.
stress fractures, right?
My dad always used to say the bigger they are, the harder they fall. Well, when they fall down, they get hurt. You know what I mean? They don't, so third to last game of sophomore season against Vanderbilt, goes up for a dunk, comes down off balance on his left leg, and he feels some pain, and he plays through it. They qualify for the tournament. They're the number 2 seed in the mid East region. They got a first round bye. And then he fouled out, and they were eliminated against University of Alabama Birmingham. So now he's like, okay, let me come back, let's see what happens. But then you find out it was a stress fracture in his left tibia, right? He misses his entire 81-82 season. So he essentially misses his junior season. He was a 5-year collegiate athlete, right? So the stress fracture doesn't heal completely, and he sits
And
out
so,
the entire
and
82-83 season as
so
well.
it says in 81, 82, he was in a cast for 44 weeks.
Yeah.
After removing the cast, they say that they looked at him like, oh, this isn't right, more surgery. Oh, that's so awful. Like
Yep.
outside of just the playing is affecting your career, imagine that's you. You spend 44 weeks in a cast, they take it off. They're like, oops,
So he misses
back to
2
it.
seasons, dude. 81-82, 82-83, misses 2 seasons. They thought it was shin splints in his left leg because like the pain he had, right? So he gets x-rays, sees it's a stress fracture he's been playing on, the 44-week cast, everything. He got a medical red shirt to allow him in another year of eligibility, right? So then he's got his senior year. He returns in 83-84. He hasn't played in 2 years. He plays in all 34 games, but he's got 10 and a half points and 9.2 rebounds and 1.9 blocks per game.
Nice.
He's a second team All-American. He had big heroics against Louisville, who was one of their major competitors. You know what I mean? He's on the cover of Sports Illustrated. Him and fellow Kentucky Wildcat Melvin Turman, they were the Twin Towers, so they were on the cover, right? Um, and they had Kenny Walker leading that team, the SEC championship and the SEC tournament. They had a top 3 national ranking. They went 26-4 that year. They get in the tournament. They beat Brigham Young to advance. Sam Bowie has 16 points, 6 rebounds against Brigham Young. And then he has 8 points and 12 rebounds and 3 blocks against Louisville. He's playing well. He gets to the Final Four. But who do they run into? They run into Patrick Ewing and the Georgetown, the inevitable, eventual NCAA champions in '84. They run into Patrick Ewing and Georgetown in the semifinals. Kentucky actually led at half. Georgetown did beat him 53-40, right? And that's his college career. But Sam Bowie has 10 points and 11 rebounds and 2 blocks. Ewing, on the other hand, only has 8 points and 9 rebounds and no blocks. So he outplayed Ewing in that game. So 96 collegiate games, he's averaged at 13.4, 8.8, 2.3 blocks. And he's shooting 52 from the field. So I could see why he was touted, especially at his size. You know what I mean? But then here's where I think he's unfairly kind of portrayed. Because I really think the downfall of Sam Bowie was a combination of 2 things. Obviously, a career filled with horrific, season-ending injuries, nagging injuries, foot injuries, leg injuries, things that are just going to deteriorate his game as he goes on. And the other fact of the matter is, this guy was drafted number 2 overall by the Portland Trailblazers in the '84 draft, right? He was drafted behind, of course, the dream, Hakeem Olajuwon, who, again, another great college player, but Hakeem Olajuwon, their points and rebounds weren't too far off. Funny enough,
in college,
that was, yeah. So Olajuwon had 13.3 points per game to Bowie's 13.4. However, Olajuwon was a bit of a better rebounder at 10.7 to Bowie's 8.8, right? But
yeah.
Olajuwon played for.
So you're saying it makes sense that Olajuwon went first, but it also makes sense that Bowie went second.
Yeah, and it makes sense that Olajuwon went first because he played for the University of Houston and he got drafted by the Houston Rockets. So they were monitoring him closely. They wanted Olajuwon. But then there's the Jordan factor. And a lot of people are like, okay, so of course, the great one, his airness, Michael Jordan, the greatest basketball player of all time, gets drafted by the Chicago Bulls, 3rd overall, behind Sam Bowie and the Portland Trailblazers at 2. After Jordan, Sam Perkins gets drafted by the Dallas Mavericks, another great longtime player in the league. And then Charles Barkley, another Hall of Famer, 5th overall to the Philadelphia 76ers.
He had the misfortune. Really, if he had stayed healthy in college, he would have been gone out a year earlier in the previous draft, right?
Yes, and he wouldn't have been compared.
He wouldn't have been compared to those guys. So that's where it all kind of went wrong.
The other thing too is, another thing I was discussing off air with Anthony, our producer, was, well, why didn't, because I was saying to him, easily enough, Portland in any scenario could have drafted Jordan, but they had Clyde Drexler. Now you're going to say, well, Clyde Drexler's not Jordan. No one's arguing that. I agree. Clyde was a great player in his own right.
But no one knew what Jordan was at the time. They just didn't know. They knew he was good because he went 3, but I mean, big athletic men are hard to find.
I agree. No one knew what Jordan was going to be, but he was a scorer, obviously, in college, and he had potential. Clyde Drexler was a 6'7" shooting guard. Jordan was a 6'6". At that time, they already had a guy that they felt was their shooting guard of the future to develop around, to build a team around. And they didn't want to dive into the same pool. Now, could they have made Drexler a small forward and Jordan a 2 guard and somehow made that work? They could have drafted Terry Porter a year later in '85. Eventually, they get Kevin Duckworth. They might have even been able to trade for Charles Oakley from Chicago, as Chicago originally traded Charles Oakley away to get Bill Cartwright. I mean, they could have. I mean, Magic Jordan and Drexler, but to get off of it, I got Bowie staying here in this position. So basically, he's a victim of circumstance. He missed 2 years of college with major injuries, right? Now he's being drafted 2nd overall, and 3 of the 5 guys in the top 5 are Hall of Fame basketball players, and one is the greatest of all time. I can't emphasize that enough. And he was picked there. And really, that's on Portland.
Yeah.
Poor Sam Bowie.
But again, I have a hard time blaming Portland just because I said, like, big men that are athletic are so hard to find. And like you said, they thought they had their shooting guard position locked up anyway.
Well, think about this. Melvin Turpin, his teammate, went sixth, I believe, and only lasted 4 years in the league. Jordan and his teammate Sam Perkins in North Carolina both got drafted 3 and 4. I mean, like those programs were great. They put out great players. I can't blame them for getting a Kentucky big man. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And you're right.
yeah,
Like at the time, they're like, okay, we've got Clyde. Now we're going to build with a low post presence, and then we'll bring in pieces around these two guys. It makes sense. But in hindsight, obviously Jordan's the greatest of all time. I mean, if you
yeah,
want to
yeah.
just look and compare, I did a little comparison analysis here in the first 3 years, right? So Bowie was putting up, in his rookie season, he put up 10 points per game to 8.6 rebounds, right? And 2.7 blocks per game, right? He played in 62 games. He started in 62 games, played in 76, right? 85, 11.8. So he went up a little bit. His rebounds are the same at 8.6, and his blocks are around 2.5. So he's hovering around the same, but he only played in 34 games. Injuries, right? Third season, he's off to a hot start in 5 games. He has 16 points per game, 6.6 rebounds. Obviously, he could get more. The sky's the limit. Boom, injury. You know what I mean? Then he's injured after 5 games. You know what I mean?
And it seems like every time it's his tibia, right?
Yes, it's his feet. It's his tibia. It's the stress fractures. He had a compound
So,
fracture,
so,
I
so
think,
his
after
second
game
year,
5.
his second year, he's out all year because he broke his tibia.
Yeah.
Third year, he's out all year because he has an ending fracture to his right tibia.
Then he misses
Like this,
all of 87,
oh
88. So he misses his whole fourth season. Meanwhile, I get it. You're looking at numbers like this. Michael Jordan, first 3 seasons, right? 28.2 per game, 6.5 rebounds, 5.9 assists, 22.7 points his second season. You know what I mean? Shooting 84% from free throw. Then Jordan bust up to 37.1 points per game, 5.2 rebounds, 4.6 assists in his third season. Okay, he's clearly on the path. Hakeem's numbers were way better, especially offensively. 20.6 his first year, 23.5 his second, 23.4 his third. He's also out rebounding him 11.9, 11.5, and 11.4. So Hakeem is clearly the better player. But again, we wouldn't you wouldn't know if Sam Bowie wasn't injured. You know what I mean? Then
hmm
Perkins had decent numbers. So Perkins' numbers were, Perkins had 11 points, 15.4, and 14.8. It's kind of where Bowie was hovering around. And then, and then he had 7.4, 8.6, and 7.7. So they were kind of, I think Bowie was a little bit better rebounder, but they were hovering around the same points. The round amount of rebound, though, 14 points his first season, 20 his second, 23 his third, 8.6 rebounds to start, then 12.8 from a 6'5" power forward, then 14.6 in his third season. Charles was a beast on the boards. He
Yeah.
just
So,
was.
so I think we're a little off track here because I just want to Sam Bowie. He literally is hurt every year. Like
He's
this
hurt, misses his fourth season, right? Um, then
and misses the next 62 games of his fifth season.
Yeah, misses the 62 games of the fifth season. Then he plays 54 and 51, 61. Oh, so then he's gone. He's gone from Portland, right?
Yeah.
So
So
he's gone
so
from
so he so
Portland.
so, so in Portland, he played his first year, made the all rookie team.
Yep.
And then over the next 4 years there, he played 63 games.
That's it. And he's hurt. He's hurt the entire time. He can't really get
Ugh.
anything going. He can't build any momentum. He can't build up. But then he comes back in 1990 or 1989-90 with the Nets, right? And now he's got 14.7 points per game, 10 rebounds. Okay. All right. Now he's starting to cook with grease, right? Plays 54 games, 51, 61, 65. He's playing a majority of the season. And now you see the best years of his career are actually in year 5, 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah.
He's getting
Because he stays
14,
healthy.
12, 15, and 9, and he's staying healthy. Then he basically rounds out his career as a backup with the Lakers. And he's still getting 8.9 off the bench and
Yeah.
4.6 and some rebounds. But he really had 4 good years with the New Jersey Nets when he
And
stayed relatively healthy.
but even with the Lakers in 93, 94, they said he only played about half the games in the 2 seasons there too because his leg injury problems reoccurred.
Yeah, I mean, that's for all this, when I think about huge busts and stuff like that, I think of Jamarcus Russell. I think of Ryan Leaf. even Markel Fultz might eventually be one. I'm not gonna like completely write him off yet, but he certainly in the eyes of Philadelphians, he's a huge bust. But there's a
Yeah,
lot of other guys. Anthony Bennett, tremendous bust in basketball. I mean, terrible bust.
yeah. Well,
Um,
but those guys were able to play at least, and you're able to see like, hey, this guy's a bust because he can't play. This guy was a bust because we didn't get to see him play.
yeah, he couldn't get on the court. He really couldn't. And when he did get on the court and stayed healthy, he was actually a productive player. But I get
So
it.
so
It's a
so
it's a
so so,
mix. It's a mix
so let's
between
so
that.
let's let's bring it back then. That's what we're here for. You said if he had stayed on the court and was healthy,
Oh,
well,
I
tell
got
me
one
what would
for you.
happen.
So, if he's not riddled by injuries throughout his career, what could he have accomplished, right? So, I thought his numbers were on the up and up before he got injured in his third season after 5 games, and he misses the fourth season, right? But if he stays healthy, if he never gets injured, right? I got him having some respectable numbers because I think what's going to happen is this. He stays healthy. Portland's going to draft Terry Porter in 85 to pair with Clyde the Glide and a healthy Sam Bowie, right? Then they're going to pick up Charles Oakley in a trade with the Bulls in 88, 89 for 7-foot backup center Kevin Duckworth. So the Bulls are going to get their center in Kevin Duckworth instead of Bill Cartwright. And the Bulls are going to go on to do their thing with Kevin Duckworth instead of Bill Cartwright. But now you've got Charles Oakley, Terry Porter at the point, Clyde Drexler at the 2, and Sam Bowie at center, healthy, right? They're gonna get a title. I got him getting a title in 2 finals appearances, right? So I got him averaging, if I looked at it realistically, I got him having a 13-year career. I got him having 13.9 per game, 1.9 blocks per game, 9 rebounds per game, a 49.6 percentage from the field. He's going to be a 2-time All-Star, a 1-time All-Defensive player. They're winning the 1989-90 championship. They're beating Detroit instead of losing 4-1 to the bad boy Pistons. They're winning now with Oakley, with a toughness, with an edge, with a fighter like Oakley. They're beating the Pistons 4-3 in a 7-game series. They're beating them, right? So then they go back to the finals 2 years later, but they lose to that Jordan and Scottie Pippen and Horace Grant led Bulls team in 6 games. But he's going to be a 2-time Western Conference champion. He's getting a title. He's losing another one. But I see him having a pretty productive career. I think he'll end up finishing out his career 2 seasons with the Lakers like he did initially. He's going to play in the 96, 97. He's going to serve as a backup to Vlade Divac his first year there, 95, 96. And then he's going to end up backing up Shaquille O'Neal. And he's going to kind of go off in the sunset. I'm not going to give him 20 and 10 numbers. I know, like, to be one of the top centers of all time, one of the greatest centers of all time, you're looking at least 20 and 10. That's like always
Mhm.
the number from any big man, any top power forward, any top center is 20 and 10. And obviously, you got guys like Kareem that had like 24 and 12. You know what I mean? He's not going to be in the top 10 all-time centers. But I think he's going to win a title. I think he's going to have a really productive career. And I think you're going to say that he was a great role player for a team that had a couple, superstar in Drexler, another great role player and low post, strong presence in Oakley, and a solid career point guard in Terry Porter. They get one. But Jordan can't be stopped. Jordan's the greatest of all time. And I think this guy suffers from the shadow of 3 out of the 5 guys being Hall of Famers and all of them winning titles except Barkley. And I think it's
Yeah.
kind of unfair that he gets shit on as like the biggest bust. I think there were worse busts. I think it's a bust because of unfortunate injuries as opposed to him just being a head case and not being able to play, like Ryan Leaf. Ryan Leaf was a mental case. He was an asshole, a true piece of shit. He dug his own grave. I don't feel bad for that guy whatsoever. I hope he rots in jail. Fuck that guy. But Bowie, I feel bad for him. I think he gets unfairly criticized as being this huge bust because of the magnitude of that draft and the players around him.
Yeah. No, and there's something to be said. If he would have just been healthy in college, he would have gone the previous year, probably would have gone behind Ralph Sampson,
Yeah.
another center, and but probably going ahead of probably number 2 overall, and no one would really kill him. Everyone would be like, oh yeah, there's 3 centers went 1, 2, and 3. Steve Stipanovich to the Pacers went number 2, but he probably goes number 3 then.
Yeah.
and we probably just go, "Hey, yeah, that was a pretty good draft for centers." I don't think
Yeah.
much more of it. Like,
Yeah, you
but
wouldn't have thought
because
anything of it.
because you're right, because Jordan and Barkley and all these other guys are there, and Elijah
Olajuwon,
Wan,
even Sam Perkins, again, another good
Sam
career
Perkins,
player,
yeah,
you
and
know what I
You
mean?
got John Stockton later in the first
Yep,
round. Like,
yep.
there's a lot of guys you look at and go, they passed over. But I think one of the interesting things about this too, looking at Sam Bowie, is that he gets tied with Greg Oden and Bill Walton as like centers that the Portland Trailblazers drafted that all had their careers derailed by injury, which is kind of a weird little thing there.
It's
All
almost
three of
like the
those
curse of
guys
the
are
centers.
very similar. Yeah, if you're Portland, don't stop taking centers.
Yeah, it's
Just stop.
and
Build
unfortunately,
everywhere else.
Walton at least, won a couple titles and was super
Yeah.
productive when he was playing, and he had a good team around him. I mean, this guy, really never got to get off the ground.
Hmm.
And it's unfortunate because I think if he would have stayed healthy, like I said, adding Terry Porter and getting another kind of gritty getting a guy like Charles Oakley, I think would have solidified it. Had they not gotten Charles Oakley, I don't think they would have beaten Detroit. But still, I mean, they were going to run into Michael, you know what I mean, eventually and lose.
Yeah.
I just think the guy, I think it's a bit. I think he's unfairly criticized and for being this huge bust. When I think it was a combination of injuries and then the players around him in that draft, and it's unfortunate. You know what I mean? He had a decent career when he did play. He wasn't a bad player. He just couldn't stay healthy. It sucks.
Hmm. Yeah, I like that though. I think it's a good way of analyzing what he is and kind of breaking down what he could have been. Is that he was always kind of a nice player, but he just bad situation in his draft, really.
Yeah, he had a lot of potential. I think the injuries obviously slowed him down. I mean, every injury is going to take a little piece of you. It's going to take a little piece of your soul. But I think he could have been a good player. Maybe he could have upped his points per game had he been really healthy. But I think giving him 13.9 a year and like 9 rebounds would have been something he could have easily legitimately done had he had a full healthy career.
I'll take it. I'll take it. So before we get out of here, though, before we get to our final thoughts on all these guys too, I want to throw it over to you, get some shout outs and plugs in there. Do your thing, Reno.
All right. Yeah, absolutely. For those of you who like to support us, you could go to patreon.com/Light Studios and support not only this show, but you could support our game development projects and other Light podcasts such as Game Johns and Screen Johns. As always, thank you to our current patrons and a special thank you to the Russell James Johns group. Without you guys, we couldn't do this. You guys are awesome, amazing. We love you. So thank you. If you'd like to support just our show, GGNP, you could do that by going to glow.fm/GGNP. And thank you in advance for all the support and love. Thanks to Luke Mullet for our theme music. We'd like to thank Light Studios for putting on this podcast and allowing us to have a career here with them. We'd also like to thank Anthony Ziccola, our producer, for everything pretty much. He's the man. He's the man, the myth, the legend. So we love you. Thanks, Anthony. And of course, the lovely Maria Lubanovic, who kills it for us on the mix in the mixing room, getting it all edited up and making us sound good. Thank you, Maria, for everything you do. If you want to reach Alex and I or the show, real easy. allmylinks.com/GGNP. allmylinks.com/GGNP. Do that. Hit it up. You'll find all our social media. You'll find all our different shows. You'll find the studio. You'll find our website, and you can find all the different places where we actually broadcast the podcast and Captivate and any way to listen. Hit us up. Let us know what you think of our show. Give us those 5-star ratings and reviews. Let us know what you'd like us to revisit or touch on. We love the feedback. Also, visit lanternlightstudios.com for more information about our other shows and other amazing podcasts. Game Johns with Mitch, Jack, and Riley. Screen Johns with Savannah and Maria. Shows are awesome. They're doing really great, and they could always use support from our GGNP listeners too. So please go and do that. If you like the podcast, you enjoyed this episode and all the others that we have, give us a 5-star rating. Leave that good review. It goes a long way to improve the show and trying to get somewhere. So thank you. That's what I got. Bow.
Nice. I like it. I like it. So today we. Whoa.
Might have clipped there.
Whoa. I think you did.
Did you just say pow?
So we had three busts that we went over today. One was due to injury, one was due to, as you said, being a dirtbag, and one was due to a lack of interest or love for the game.
Listen, I will tell Ryan Leaf too. Tell Ryan Leaf, I'll eat that. I'll fucking fight you. I'll eat your dick off like Kobayashi.
I don't think he wants any part of this.
No, no,
Um,
I fucking hate this guy.
uh, so basically, what I want to ask you then, for your home team, it's your home team. You got to take a high pick. He's going to bust out. What's the worst way a player can bust out? Is it to not care? Is it to be hurt all the time, or is it just be a dirtbag?
A combination of
What's going to hurt you the most as a fan,
not
Reno?
caring. I think the not caring in dirtbag is like synonymous. It goes hand in hand. It's like anyone who just doesn't have love for the sport. They're quitting on their teammates. They're throwing people under the bus. They're shitting on other people. They're screaming at fucking fans and reporters.
It
They're
sounds like
acting
it's the
like a piece of
dirtbag thing.
shit.
It sounds like
Yeah,
just
yeah. I
don't sit
can't
there
can't fault a
because
guy for
like
injuries. Can't fault a guy for injuries. Look, you love Kevin Cobb, right? You had the number 4, right, on your back.
let's not say I love Kevin Cobb.
You
Let's
love
just
you
say
some look, you got the poster signed, you got the jersey, you loved
I think
yourself
we're
some
going.
Kevin Cobb. All
I think we're
right.
going too far.
But he got hurt. He got hurt a lot while I was here. And we made a good deal getting rid of him. But I didn't blame him. He wasn't a bad guy. He just got hurt and wasn't great because of the injuries. But when you're a piece of shit, fuck you. Then I will piss on your fucking grave.
I'm gonna go ahead and take a controversial take here. I think it's almost worse than the injuries because every year you get your hopes up. It's gonna be different. Every year you watch your team not make a change that they need to make because the injured bust hangs around for a long, long time. Just the promise of what they could be, holding up a roster spot, holding up a player that you would have drafted. I think ultimately, long run, that's almost the worst thing for your team. Because if he's a dirtbag or he doesn't care, you're going to start figuring this out quicker.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's my
I
alternate
get
take on
that
that right
point
there.
too. I do, but I fucking rather somebody be like, you know what, I gave it everything I had. My body wouldn't do it. Than being like, yeah,
Yeah.
you know what, I'm gonna fucking go golfing. I'm gonna go golfing.
No,
I'm
no, no,
gonna
no.
jerk off at a strip club, instead of
I
going
don't
out with my teammates.
I don't necessarily disagree with you which one's a makes for a better person. But I think the one of them going to hurt your team more. Because you look at Antonio Brown, like they get once they realize it's a problem, they move on from him. They're like, "Oh, we're done with this guy." But a guy who's hurt all the time, you end up holding on to. That's my only point.
Yeah,
And they stunt the growth of your franchise.
it's a fairly good point.
So,
I give you that.
well, on top, while you're giving me credit, I'm gonna wrap this show up before you take it back. So,
You better.
so thanks everyone for tuning in, and this has been a greatest game never played.
Pow!